I let more people slide than I want to. But I don't let them slide.
Good morning, everybody. If I can have everybody come inside and finish up getting your breakfast, and we'll get started in a couple minutes. Somebody left this up here at the front desk when they signed in. For me? Okay. Not the fire. Is that the money I sent you for getting bought in the
because the law, like many laws throughout the country, state that all fire escapes must be maintained at all times. So what's that mean? checks those periodically. The law throughout the United States that doesn't have a 5-year rule or a 1-year rule is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So, what do you think the tenants are doing? Looks good to me. So, let me tell you what we've done nationwide from Boston to New Jersey to Seattle, to Texas to Chicago. Now, I've taught, some of you might have seen, I've taught a 6-hour continuing education course at Sayreville, Bergen, Camden. Anybody was at any of those classes? One guy here. So that was a 6-hour course of the same thing. So today I'm going to condense it and squeeze it and throw it at you in bullet fashion. So any questions, pop at me. So this is interactive. But I'm going to try to give you, this is a thumbnail version of a book that we have that we're putting together so that you can have an actual book of industry standard documentation, confidence tests, report examples, everything, and you can just put it in on your shelf. So whenever you have farscape issues now, tomorrow, or 10 years from now, you can just go there and pull out the industry standard. And the reason why we can do that is because guess what there isn't currently? An industry standard. Let me tell you a very quick reason why all farscape, the industry kind of died in 1930. From 1900s to 1930s, they were building buildings everywhere across the country, and there was hundreds of farscape companies in the United States. Hundreds. Whether they were outfitting New York, New Jersey, Chicago, Texas, Los Angeles, there was hundreds of these 5, 10, 15, 20-story buildings being put up, and hundreds of these farscapes, and there was hundreds of these companies out there, hundreds of them out. Then in 1930, the Uniform Building Code changed and said, you know what, this is the stupidest idea we've ever had with putting farscapes outside because nobody's doing what to them? Maintain them. So let's put 2 staircases inside on every building. So the law changed and said, no new farscapes. That's what happened to those hundreds of farscape companies. Now, the next rule that came along said, well, what about all these existing buildings that have farscapes? And some guy 75 plus years ago said, you know what, in 50 years, all these buildings are going to come down, and all these farscapes are going to go away. In the meantime, what happened was somebody invented bubble gum, duct tape, and paper clips. And so that's what's been holding a lot of these buildings together, and guess what is on some of these older buildings? Farscapes. So what happened was, when they were built in the 1900s to 1930s, none of them were collapsing and killing people or firemen, so nobody cared. And as the years went on, a lot of the information associated with farscapes, if you look in all your code books right now, and you try to find anything on farscapes, you're going to find one paragraph. And that one paragraph nationwide, whether it's a fire code, building code, or housing code, says all farscapes must be maintained, kept free of obstacles, and must be load tested. But they never say how often. Some states, like Massachusetts, when this fireman almost got killed and the lady did get killed, said, you know what, we're going to check it every 5 years. San Francisco and LA, they check it every 1 year. In Texas, they have a code that says they want somebody to walk these farscapes every 3 months. How often do you think this is being enforced? Okay, so all I'm going to do is take you from some of the, across the country, I'm talking about some of the worst ones, some of the best ones. I'm going to talk specifically about Seattle. Seattle, I was called into Seattle about 3 years ago when somebody was out there, 2 or 3 people with smoke on a fire escape, and it ripped off the building and it fell to the ground. If you had gone 3 to 5 years ago to the Seattle website and looked for fire escape testing, you would have found that they had what's called a self-testing program, meaning you could stick your head out the window, look at the fire escape, and if it wasn't on the ground, you could write a letter back to the fire marshal and say, the fire escape looks good to me, it's in good condition, and that was it. How often do you think people even sent those self-reports back? So they had asked for an awareness program. Now, how many people have ever seen a fire escape confidence test? Well, there's an example of one in there. We're going to go through it because there was none. So we created one and we let anybody borrow it. Anybody use it, and if you go to the Seattle or the Tacoma or the Portland, Oregon websites, you go to their websites, a copy of our confidence test was used as the draft for, and I have a model on here. So if you want an industry standard confidence test that's currently being used by some fire departments, I have their example in here. How about a load test criteria? Anybody ever see a load test criteria? I have it in here also for you. How many have ever seen a proper fire escape inspection? Or a report? We have one in here. So what we're going to do is, we're going to go over some of the examples of what should be and we're gonna set the bar. So I'm gonna go and pick up the bar off the floor. I'm gonna raise the bar, because that's where it was. Everybody was stepping over the bar. And we're gonna put it up here so that way you'll have an idea of what to expect from building inspectors, fire inspectors, architects, engineers, fire inspectors. If they're gonna be doing inspections in your area, because what's the reason for the farescape? It's supposed to do two things. It's my second means of egress. If I'm in the building, it's usually 50% of my means of egress, and it makes me to self-evacuate. I don't get on a farescape to wait for you to show up. I'm supposed to get away from the fire by myself if I'm able. So the first step of a farescape is self-evacuation. The second is what you guys use to get in and out of a building in case something's gone wrong. But we also have that dirty little law that you guys have, which is amongst yourselves. The old guys with gray hair tell the new guys with starting dark hair, right? In case of fire, don't use the farescape. Can you imagine that? Imagine there was a news reporter behind us and saying, what do you mean in case of fire, don't use the farescape? Is anybody telling the tenants that? When's the last time you saw a landlord collect his rent through the farescape? Because if they do, if you force all landlords to collect their rent through the farescape, you'd have a better awareness. Okay? Well, that's what most tenants used to get away from collecting, the landlord that's collecting his rent. But some people are now falling through farescapes, treads. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to talk to you about, we're going to go quickly through this, and then we'll open it up for questions. I'm also going to talk to you about, we have an online training, because you guys are hard to get in a room all at one time, once a month, and sometimes people can't make it. But if you go to Farescape Academy on YouTube, there's a free channel there. There's about 300 videos from all over the country, including New Jersey, of farescape inspections, of what you're supposed to be looking for if you're an inspector. Not climbing on it, not sticking your face out the window. If you're just walking, because you're doing a normal inspection in the building, and you walk underneath the farescape, either in the back or in the front, I'm going to show you a couple of tricks to look for that you can write the one of two violations. Must be structurally sound, must be kept painted. The easiest one to write is paint. So if it's not being maintained, you got a deterioration violation that you have. It's the easiest one. You just got to show that the farescape has not been maintained. Now, on average, every 3 to 5 years is what it takes for a farescape to stop rusting up. So you can literally walk down the street and how many violations you're going to write just on deterioration. The only thing you have to be worried about, guess what? There's been a problem with a lot of people out there in regards to farescape, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why. When you write a violation, most of you guys, from force of habit, have been writing scrape and paint violations. Guess what the clients do? They got a typical 5-story farescape, and you write a violation, scrape and paint it. Guess what that client gets his first bid from? Joe the Painter. Joe the Painter comes out and says, oh, I can paint this farescape for $2 grand. And by the way, it's a couple of loose threads up there. The guy goes, okay, thank you. So he's got $2 grand. Then he goes, you should fix some of those bolts because there's a problem. He goes, okay, so he calls Bob the ironworker. Bob the ironworker comes down to a typical 5-story farescape with staircases and the thing is rotted 50 to 75%. Guess what his bill is going to be to repair and paint it? 20 grand. So now he's got a $2,000 paint bill. He's got a 20 grand repair and paint bill, and he's got a violation in the middle. Guess which one he's going to use to satisfy? Okay, so now he quickly throws a paint job on there, and the painter guy who tells him about that broken tread, what's he do? What's he put on there?
Duct tape.
Duct tape, bubble gum, or paper clips, you know what I'm saying? And then that's what you guys have waiting. You have all these little ticking time bombs waiting out there. So all we're going to do now is eliminate some of the people that have been the main cause why you're whispering to each other in case of fire, don't use the farescape. You guys will never write scrape and paint violations. You're going to write repair, paint, test. That's all you'll ever say on any violation. Repair, paint, test. And they're going to say, well, what's the word repair? Repair what? What did you see wrong? He says, I didn't see anything wrong. You got to get a professional inspection done by a structural engineer or a farescape inspector. A report must be generated that tells me and you what needs to get done. You get that work done first. Then you can paint it. And then, as your law says, you've got a load test, right? Anybody familiar with what a load test is? How much it costs? Typical 5-story farescape upstairs, how much it's going to cost to load test it? $3,000 to $5,000 to load test it. So after spending money fixing it, he's got to load test it. Or you have a choice nationwide. A lot of the inspectors or the fire marshals, if they come back with a report from an engineer, signed by an engineer, and I'll show you all the questions we're going to ask and why the engineer has a new test now that he's got signed. If the farescape comes back good to excellent, refurbished, not repaired, refurbished back to good to excellent, he can forego the load test because an engineer says, you know, this thing is in great excellent condition. We're also going to talk about the unknown, because that's 97% of the fire escape is outside. It's called bolt connections you can see outside. What about that stuff that sticks in the wall? Whether it be a wood structure with a plate on the back, or it's buried into the wall only 8 to 12 inches. What about that? How do we load test that? How do we confirm that? Several ways. You can drill a hole next to it and verify that it's deep, or if it's cheaper, we just duplicate the connection. In a 50 to 75-year-old fire escape, if you duplicate the connection, because to verify it cost me $200, to duplicate it cost me $20. I put an epoxy bolt next to it. Now I got the original, I got the next one, the new one. Do I need to verify it anymore? So these are some of the things that we're gonna go after. So again, on some of these videos, if you go to YouTube, Farscape Academy, some of the better videos are, believe it or not, out of Portland, Oregon, because I've got this guy, and he's about 60 years old, and he knows it all. Some of you may know him. And then you got another guy that's about 27 years old, and he also knows it all. So, meaning everybody has a different perception of what a fire escape is and what it isn't until they get into one of these classes, and we show what they can't see because they were never taught to look for that. The same way you guys can walk by a fire truck and see a hose that is about to burst, right? Frayed or something, it's the same thing we're going to teach you. Okay, so let's take a look at this, and then I'm going to go into what to look on a fire escape, and then we'll probably play one of these because this is pretty loud up here. So, if you start on this page, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all the things that we do here, and then I'm going to get back to this page because there's a little bit of an idea of what you guys can do in your city to do a fire escape awareness program. This is the story of what happened in Boston. Yep. So, now let's take a look at just the tags. Starting with the fire escape tag. These tags are currently in use in Seattle. You got a fire escape that's been inspected by an outside firm, a private firm. They will either put a red tag on it, a yellow tag, or a white tag. Once a fire escape passes inspection, it gets a white tag. So imagine, in the middle of the night, smoky, you're running around all over the place, and then you get to a fire escape, and there's a white tag on the fire escape. Is there any need to be whispering anymore? Any need to go back to your truck and get a ladder to extend or wait for apparatus to arrive that's going to go above certain heights, 3 to 5 stories? You feel safe getting on a fire escape that has a white, it's certified. And on this tag, it's going to have the name, the address, the phone number of the guy who inspected it, and when the next inspection is due. You don't have to go back to any file to find out when the next inspection is due, because when you walk 7 to 10 feet off the ground, you can clearly see who not only inspected it, when the next inspection is due. How's that going to help? Now, when you get there, you see a yellow fire escape or a red one. Red one means it's life safety issues. I mean, it's not good for the tenants nor the firemen. How long should you keep a red tag on a fire escape in a building? It needs to be immediately corrected, or you can vacate the building and do whatever. But a yellow one, what's that mean? It's got deficiencies. Deficiencies means it's got rust in its connections. Is it still safe? No. But it's not. It didn't get to white, but it's not a red. I don't got things dangling. But should anything be hammered, should any excessive force be put on it, should you put 10 firemen on it, that yellow is not as good as it can't be used, and it says so on the tag. Even though it's a yellow, you can't be using it as fire escape. But a lot of times on yellows, you give them 30 days to repair. Reds, you give them they must be immediately repair. White, the fire escape is certifiable. So if it took 75 years to ignore fire escapes, one of the ideas that we're going to talk about is going back out now and asking everybody and everywhere that you're doing inspections on any building for a copy of their maintenance records. What's the typical response you're going to get when you ask somebody for, you've just done their sprinklers and everything, you say, hey, by the way, I see a fire escape outside there, can I have the copies of the maintenance records or your last certification? What have you just set them up into? Deer in the headlights, violation time. So do you have to go outside when the guy says, I don't have any maintenance records on that 50 to 75-year-old fire escape, and I have no certification? Yes?
I see these 3 tags have New Jersey on them. Does New Jersey actually have these tags?
No, this is industry standard tags, but if you go to Seattle, they have these tags. I'm just showing you examples of what you could utilize in your city, but if the inspector is putting them on, it's a private company that puts these on, not the city putting these on.
Okay, but it does say New Jersey on them.
Yeah, that's just, on the bottom, it's just, the code, it references the code.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not a New Jersey tag. You can make it, I'm gonna talk about, if you want to utilize this area here, see this area here, your vendor or city info? And we'll talk about what the options are, meaning if you're gonna start, we're looking at farscapes over the next 1 to 3 years to identify them. And you wanna start putting up your tags only to identify them, not to be the inspector of them, but you wanna identify them, then you wanna use these same tags, because when you ask somebody, do you have a copy of your certification, or do you have any maintenance records on your farscape? And they say no. What tag, if you want to from the city, put a tag on there. This is not an inspection, but what tag do you want to put on there? A yellow or a red? You can't put a red, but unless things are dangling, I don't put reds on anything else. I got dangling pieces of steel. But I would put a yellow. And what's that yellow mean to the client? That he's got 30 days to provide you with an inspection report. When an inspection company shows up, you want to have them take your tag off, and they put their tag on with their information in the yellow area, in that area. You understand? So you guys are not expecting farscapes, but you are identifying farscapes. And again, this is just a suggestion. This is not a code, because to change code, to do a lot of things, it's a snowball. It's a snowball up a hill, pushing with your nose. So we've done a lot of these classes, but a lot of times it takes a lot of time for stuff to come down. But a lot of different areas have done local ordinances to utilize industry standard documentation. So everything that you see here is not something that has to be pushed through a code book. It's something that's an industry standard documentation that you can use as a guide with anybody inspecting in your area. Okay, so if anybody has any suggestions, and we've tried, again, if you go to Seattle, on their website, you go to seattle.org, and you go to all their confidence tests. They have all their confidence tests online. So if you're doing sprinklers, smokes, whatever, they have an actual confidence test, and the farscape confidence test that I'm going to show you here is online. So they made it so that any inspector has to use an industry standard documentation to repeat. Now I'll explain why we have an industry standard documentation. So the tagging, which you guys already tag, extinguishers, you guys tag a lot of things, right? This is what's the code if something's out of service? It goes red, right? So if your sprinkler system's out of it, so we just took this and brought it. Why didn't they ever bring it outside? So the tag has a lot of information on it, but the main thing is a color code for your firefighters. They get there, if it's white, it's all right. If it's red, somebody's going to be dead. If it's yellow, it can't be yellow for too long, because if the tag is dated and it's 6 months old, yellow, what's the problem? Well, if it's 6 months old and yellow, the owners are ignoring it, but the inspectors are not pushing them. Unless you have fees, violations, and all kinds of things which you can put into this so that the tag becomes a line in the sand. Let's take a look at the next thing that we have on here. Confidence tests. This confidence test is actually the confidence test from Seattle. And if you read, there's 2 parts to it. There's a part that's a general question, and there's a part that's a structural question. One thing you've never had to do as an inspector of farscape anywhere in the United States is provide a confidence test. You would basically only have to write on your letterhead, farscape is structurally sound and has to be kept anchored to my opinion. To the best of my opinion, information, and belief, the farscape is structurally sound and has to be kept anchored. Again, with the disclaimer at the bottom that says this is just a visual inspection and no load test was performed, and if anything falls, it's not my fault. So when you look at these questions, though, the one key thing that will determine whether farscape gets repaired or gets refurbished is whether all the internal rust of the connection are removed. So that's one of my questions that I have in here. I put in here under the general is like, is it painted? Is there any obstructions? Is there any electrical near it that is not properly protected? That's a general question. And you've got to answer yes to all the following. But then you go to the structural and it says, is there any connection, any rust in any of the tread connections, any of the support connections, any of the rail connections? Was it removed? Most of these farscapes are 50 to 75 years old. The original hardware on them are what type of bolt? Does anybody know? Square head bolt. So every time you walk down any farscape and you see a square head bolt, just be confident, be assured that that 50 to 75-year-old bolt, which has been left outside its whole entire life, is going to support your weight. So if you have a farscape that's been outside, barely been kept painted, rusting at every joint, because when you think any of them used silicone 50 to 75 years ago in any joint. So water has gotten in there. Does anybody know how treads are made and how gratings are made and and rails are made, 20-foot lengths of steel, cut to various sizes, join the two pieces together, pop a hole in it. 50 to 75 years ago, you put either a rivet in there, or you put in a square head bolt. Now, before you put any of these rails together, was that steel painted or primed? So naked steel got together, primed, and bolted, and then they encapsulated that as a unit, whether it be a rail or a tread. Guess what happens the first day they put it up? That started happening at that uncovered joint. Started rusting right there. So it's popping all your rivets, popping all your bolts. One of the things we're going to cover on here also, when I finish up with the structural here, is what kind of primer did they use? Anybody know? 50 to 75 years ago? Lead. So everybody's aware of the EPA requirements now since 2010? Need to have a renovator's license, touch a fire escape, or touch anything outside of the building. Because if it has, it's older than 1978. You guys know any buildings in your city that are older than 1978 that have a fire escape? Must be touched by a renovator. So a lot of these fire escapes are just full of lead. And depending on what you have, you can't even repair these anymore. You have to remove them and put up a brand new one. That's from the EPA. Anybody caught touching a fire escape and not using the suit, the little mask, and protection in the plastic, $35,000 or $37,500 fine per violation to the vendor, to the guy doing the work. Okay? So, but not that all fire escapes have to be replaced. It's about the containment, meaning if I'm doing a fire escape that's been deemed to have lead, all the windows have to be closed, we have to go 20 feet for the plastic, and we have to collect all the chips. We have to make sure everybody's suited so that any lead that's getting on you is properly protected. And then we have to suck all the bags with a HEPA vac, and then we got to put everything in a dumpster. That's a construction dumpster. That's the way it's currently. But the questions now, getting back, you have a confidence test here that talks about everything, including the cantilevers and whether they drop properly or not. Because everybody aware of the rule, how cantilevers work? They're supposed to drop at 2 to 3 feet per second, hit the ground, and stay down. You guys ever see that happen by itself? Or they usually fire escapes stay up in the air, have a chain on the back, they're always horizontal. And in order for you to get it down, you have to use a pole, pull it down. And then while it's down, if you step off it, what's it do? It goes back up. So you got to lose one fireman to do what? To be a doorman, to hold his foot on that thing while everybody else is fighting the fire. What's that guy doing? Fire escape is supposed to, cantilever is supposed to have a release arm. You're supposed to release it, and once you release it, the thing is perfectly balanced. It weighs 25 more pounds on the nose. It drops to the ground 2 to 3 feet per second, hits the ground, and stays down. People can self-evacuate whether you arrive 1 minute, 10 minutes, or an hour later. Guess what's waiting for you to get up 12 feet up in the air? A staircase. All right? So cantilevers, a lot of them don't have the release arms on them. Also, if there's a release arm, guess what? Who can't break into the building? Thieves, because the release arm is only released from above. Okay, so that's the thing with cantilevers. How about a lot of you guys have these ladders that are been cut in the middle and they flop out, and they have this chain thing you're supposed to release slowly. Illegal. If I can point out anything that's going to either hurt, kill, or maim anybody. So here's these ladders that are flopped out, and they flop down usually into the sidewalk. If you're down there not paying attention and somebody above is trying to get away and they just release that ladder, what's going to happen to your skull or your side or your face when it comes swinging around and whacks you in the face? What happens when there's a good wind coming along and there's just some bystander walking along and the thing is not even hooked upstairs because they usually lean backwards to itself. But a good wind comes along and swings it out. It's going to come down. So those are illegal. All ladders are supposed to slide down 2 to 3 feet per second and hit the ground with weight. How many weight systems are there out there? Enough to show as examples of what it's supposed to be. Some of these people have chopped their ladders and basically made these flop outs. And these flop outs are illegal because they can hurt or kill somebody during an emergency evacuation. But they're easily fixed. You take a flop out and if it's 7 to 9 feet off the ground, can you jump and save yourself 7 to 9 feet off the ground without hurting yourself? So you can just remove half of it and that's the fix. Or you can make it so that it slides on itself with a weight of some sort to slow it down. Or you can just permanently mount it on the side of the building and just come down all the way to the ground. So there's answers there. Now back to all the questions. We cover everything including catwalks, over roofs. How many times have you hit a fire escape comes out a window and the ladder is down at the other corner? Guess what they need going over that all fire escapes must be continuous to a public way. So does that include crossing a roof with a catwalk system? So you got to control them like cattle so that in the smoking and the craziness, they'll not go to the edge and do what in a panic? Fall off or jump off, right? They're gonna walk, and at the same time, when you arrive with all your gear on, and the whole fire, I mean, the building's ablaze, and there's a fire in the middle of that roof, but you got this metal bridge going across it. What are you willing to do, possibly? Run across that metal bridge, spanning the entire roof, and save somebody? So that's why catwalks are supposed to be. So all fire escapes must be continuous and to a public way. Not into a backyard that's locked up by fences, and you have to go to a public way. Okay? So the other thing too that they did in Seattle, aside from having all this, is you must, when you inspect the fire escape, you must send one of these copies to the inspector, pass or fail. And then when it passes again, you must send another copy of a passed one signed and sealed by an inspector or an engineer. There's a final piece of this, and that is the yearly walkthrough. So you have that every 5 years you have to inspect in Boston, Seattle, and then they have a walkthrough. Tacoma went one further. They make the owners walk through their building every year. The management company, the owner, somebody walks through their building every year, and they sign this very simple form that says the fire escape still looks good, it's still painted, I don't have any obstructions, no trees within my fire escape, and they sign it and they send it in to you. So you get it professionally inspected every 5, and you get a 1-year inspection coming in from the people. Okay? Questions so far? No? All right, let's go right back to this next one. What I have here is some industry standard guidelines on what is a fire escape. What is a staircase, what is a ladder, what is a cantilever. And I also have some industry standard guidelines on how to properly repair a fire escape. And when you look at the guidelines, again, when you blow this up into a bigger book, you can actually read without having to use. So for the sake of trees and paper, I have to shrink this down. But you got these guidelines on how to properly repair a fire escape. Now, those guidelines are pretty simple. You know, everybody thinks it's going to be an encyclopedia of information. It's not. Remove the rust, change the bolt. But we have to word it a little bit bigger than that. But basically, you see rust, you got to remove it. You got to change the bolt. You can't leave an old bolt. Anything that's square head, 50 to 75 years old, do you want it to stay? If it's in good to excellent condition, do you want it to stay? See, it's one of those that you're going to have an argument between an engineer and somebody says, well, our policy is if it's in good to excellent condition and it's a 50 to 75-year-old bolt, I just want it reinforced. So you choose. If it's faster to change that bolt out, because that's a refurbishment in that lifetime of that fire escape, or drill a new hole behind that original bolt. Keep your original bolt, give me a backup bolt on it. So a 50 to 75-year-old square head bolt should be minimally reinforced, if not replaced. You choose which one you're willing to sign off on. But if any connection has rust in it, and I mean a connection, not surface rust at the top. When you have a connection, sometimes you get surface rust right at the top. That's not rust that's penetrated the connection. That's surface rust. You clean that out, silicone it, done. Keep the bolt. If you have rust that has separated it at least an eighth, and you can see the rust all the way through a tread connection, a support connection, a rail connection, that connection must be separated. Remove all the rust. Prime the inside. If you can't get in there, you use spray to get in there. Silicone shutter with 50-year silicone, and then you put in a brand new bolt. What kind of bolt? Stainless steel, titanium. What kind of bolts do we use? Any bolt you want, because the bolt is not what failed there. As soon as you have a connection that rusts and it expands, it'll snap. A stainless steel bolt, a galvanized bolt, and a titanium bolt. Doesn't matter. See, the problem with the connection is not the bolt. It's the connection that has expanded and torn the bolt. So you have a bad connection, but if you put a connection, tread, support, rail, with 50-year silicone inside of it, which it never had in its life, what's that fire escape going to need the rest of its life while it's still in that building? Just a paint job. Okay? So if you can get them to properly repair a fire escape and silicone shut it against and seal it against corrosion, everybody that has a fire escape will have the ability to just keep it painted. And who can paint it? Can the owners of the building paint their own fire escape? Okay. The last thing we're going to talk about is new fire escapes. So don't misinterpret the law. No new fire escapes means no new construction with a fire escape. So you can't dig a hole in the ground, put in a foundation, put up a brand new building, put a fire escape on it. Can't do it. But any pre-existing mansion, building, clubhouse, factory, anything that they're going to convert anything over to residential, commercial use, whatever, and they have one staircase in the middle or one staircase way down at the end, and they really need to satisfy the means of egress on that side, they will, and they have the right to put a fire escape on it to the ground. So fire escapes are going to be around because they're going to satisfy a lot of these dead buildings that only a fire escape will give them the answer. So just so you know, the law, because there's been some misinterpretation, no new fire escapes on new construction, but you can have fire escapes. You can maintain existing fire escapes for the lifetime of the building, and you can put a fire escape on any building, whether it's a 2-foot, 8 run and rise, going down 24 inches wide, or a 36. If it's going to satisfy a primary means of egress, so it's got to come out of a door, 3 feet wide, 7-11 stairs all the way to the ground. If it's only going to satisfy one room in an apartment, usually on the top, it's usually a 24-inch fire escape, 8 and 8 rise and run all the way to the ground, because that's its own, and sometimes you will allow them to go through a window. It's your call. Or you'll convert that to a door. All this shows is what's available out there. We can build fire escapes that have cantilevers. You can build fire escapes that have ladders. Again, your call, because sometimes it's over a sidewalk, and you don't want to use a cantilever over a sidewalk. Spirals. Spirals are not allowed on fire escapes. But on a case-by-case basis, when the mathematics won't let you do anything else, you will stick a spiral in a corner somewhere. After the building inspector, the fire marshal, everybody signed off because they haven't found any other solution other than tearing down the building. But spirals have been used. But again, on a case-by-case basis, it's not a traditional means of egress. So if anybody just keeps throwing fire escape spirals at you as a means of egress, you can just say no. If they have all the mathematics in the world in the backyard, you have to put in a full metal set of stairs to the ground. Because firemen can't go up and firemen can't come down with people on them and hoses and stuff. It's a mess. Let's see what else we got. Reports. Typical reports. Now, a typical report with today's technology means whenever you have anybody fill out a confidence test for you, you say, give me my photograph. Everybody that's familiar with computers says that if you take some photographs and you hit print, a lot of your printers will say how many per page, and you can get 9 per page, 16 per page. You want them to be about 9 per page. They don't have to be in a fancy report with a lot of writing. So if they give you a report, say where's the photographs of the fire escape, whether it failed or whether it passed. If it passed, great. Show me the reports of the passing fire escape. If it failed, show me the reports of why it failed. Photographs. So it doesn't have to be in any fancy form. You just need copies, and they usually be PDF and emailed to you. Otherwise, you have to send your fax machine. As you can see, the confidence test can be faxed to you because it's a black and white kind of thing. And anything that's photo doesn't fax very well. That's why you need to get an email, but not everybody always has email. And they'll usually send you the reports within 7 to 10 days. The reports are expected on your desk. Okay? And obviously the EPA. It's very clear. 2010, the hammer came down. Anything outside that's older than 1978 is presumed to have lead. Can't do anything about it. So we have to lead test. And we're not a professional lead testing company. Even though we're a licensed company to handle lead, our test is not the test. It just says that we've identified lead. It's up to the owner to provide us with a test from a professional company licensed in that state that says, yeah, my fire escape has lead, but it's below the lead content, and you can just handle it like a regular fire escape. Or yes, it does have lead, and you have to follow EPA guidelines. Okay? So, let's see if there's anything else on here. I think that's pretty much it. These I can have, if anybody wants to leave their card, anybody wants to schedule a class, we can do this online, class at your fire station, because we've taught, for example, in Elizabeth, we've taught at Newark, we've taught throughout, and a lot of things that we do, and I have some cameras for it, and I try to record as much as I can to put it online. But when you go, what you have here, this is actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to play this story. This is one of the things that happened up in Boston. Everybody remember the Station Night Fire?
In case of an emergency.
The Station Night Fire, we got a call from Channel 7, Hank Phillippe Ryan. She's about 4 feet 3 something in the hammer. She's like a little pit bull. And when she gets on the story, she'll tear it up. She wanted to just do a story on fire escapes and how, in case of a fire, use your fire escape because it's there to help you and whatever. But when I told her that 80% of the stuff that I look at, if not more, always fails, she didn't believe me. So we took her out and showed her downtown Boston and let her walk around freely, not pointing anything out to her. And she did a little news story that instead of a minute-long piece on fire escape, it ended up being a 5-minute piece. This was right after the Station 9 fire. So I'll just play that, and then I'll talk to you about all the things that we have on line 3. And I'll be wrapping it up, and you guys can ask me some questions.
Get out a lot, but how can we be sure they're safe? Seven News investigation uncovers a massive statewide safety problem, faulty fire escapes ignored by inspectors.
Nicholas Ryan shows us why you could be left with no way out.
The smoke, the flames, and the frightened faces. All the firefighters' line of duty. But Chief William Hitchcock remembers the night it wasn't the fire that almost stopped him.
cities, 40 states, plus minus, the guy that inspects fire escapes is the fire department. In 10 states, it's the building department. And guess how well they take care of you? Do they go there in the middle of the night? Find out those things. So, that's one of the reasons why it's been forgotten. It's not their issue, because they never inspect through a fire escape. But in New Jersey, the inspections is all through the fire department. But here's how you can have the building department help you. Imagine every permit that was issued by the building department could not be closed unless it had a current certificate on file. So automatically, you're going to get instantaneous help from the building department that says, you touch any building's being touched, and it has a fire escape, before you close the permit, can you make sure you ask for a copy of the current certification? That's what Boston did because of this story. So they didn't jump on it immediately like, oh my God, we gotta get it. They started raising the awareness and all that. But what really helped is frantic people calling us last minute. Oh my God, I got a closing in a week. I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And I don't have a certificate on file. How about, you guys have that here, that you can't buy or sell or rent an apartment without having one of your checks that go through it? You guys have that here? So what's stopping you guys from asking for a certificate on that as one of the requirements? It is 50% of the egress, right? Here's a crazy scenario, right? Somebody gets a 3-story building and they've made it all beautiful, but the back stairs are painted, and you needed to extend one of the bedrooms or make a walk-in closet. So what's the guy do? He takes out the entire staircase on the inside and the back of the building. And you do your normal inspection. The building inspector never caught it because he's just doing his thing, and all of a sudden at the end, when you guys doing your walkthrough, there's no staircase in the back. The interior staircase is gone because the guy made interior walk-in closets from it. What do? Let that guy occupy that building? If there is an occupation in there and somebody let it go, somebody missed this, and you walked in and 2 or 3 years later and you walk in and there's the closets that used to be staircases are still there, what do? You let the people stay there? They don't have, 50% of the means of egress is gone. Do they have the right to be in that apartment? Okay, so now, let's take this one step further. Let's take the fire escape and put it on the outside. And the fire escape outside is missing 3 or 4 of its treads. You still let the people stay inside that house? So, fire escape, it's the bastard child of egress. It's outside, nobody cares about it. But, you know, if it was an inside staircase and missing, you guys would freak out. You know, if somebody just removed a stairwell, you know, on the inside of the building, you guys just freak out. All bells go off. But as soon as you go outside, you know, it's like, I didn't see that. So the outside staircases get the most abuse, we get no respect, but you've got a law on your books that says, if it looks deteriorating, that's all you need to write a violation. You can walk all day long and be blind and write fire escape violations on every fire escape, because 90% of the time you'd be right when you write a deterioration violation on a fire escape, because there is no maintenance record showing that they've been kept painted in the past 5 years. Home Depot's paint won't last more than 5 to 7 years on a good. The Rust-Oleum can only lasts 5 to 7 years when you paint a brand new piece of steel, primed and painted. It asks you to repaint that in 7 years. These fire escapes are 50 to 75 years old. So one of the things that we do when you're going on and you go to the website and it's all fire escapes, you're going to be able to spot fire escapes now that are rusty and fire escapes that are shiny black. So when you look up, what do you look for? As evidence of maintenance. Well, that's the paint side. Believe me, some of the people to give you the wrong impression, they're going to paint that fire escape. It's going to be shiny and dripping black. But when you look up, what's the first thing you need to see that is evidence of maintenance? The hex head bolts. So you look up, and you've got square head bolts in all the treads, square head bolts in all the rails, square head bolts in all the supports, and the thing is shiny black. What kind of violation do you have there? Just paint. No, deterioration covers paint. It's a structural issue. The fire escape is not structurally sound. And the guy's going to argue with you. No, but it's just I just got to paint it. Dude, show me one hex head bolt on this. In the 50 to 75 years that I've been here, show me one evidence of maintenance that you put a hex head bolt anywhere. So the rule of thumb nationwide is, in a 50 to 75 year life of a fire escape, you expect all the stair treads to be swapped out to hex head bolts. No, would you, if you had it the way you wanted, would you want them to be swapped out? So that's what you want. Otherwise, if they're all in great condition, you want them all at least reinforced with a hex head bolt? Whichever fast, right? How about all the main supports that hold all the platforms? Do you want see hex head bolts on the entire rail, but you need to see them at the joints and the corners and on the postings. So when you look up and you see nothing but hex head bolts, square head bolts on a 50 to 75 year old fire escape, what kind of violation do you have? Structural or maintenance? I'm sorry, painting. Which one? Structural. So do you care whether it's rusty or painted black? Because when you walk on your regular inspections doing anything, just look up and look for hex head bolts or rivets. Rivets are older. Square head bolts came in after rivets. So if you go, you look up at a fire escape and it's got riveted supports and riveted treads. What are you going to say? Okay? How easy is that? So you have a choice. When you're walking along and you look up and the thing has just got no paint on it, do you even have to search for square head bolts? Does it matter? What's the repair violation? You got either things dangling or something that looks like a mess. You want to identify anything on that fire escape that's a violation? Or what's the three things you write on your violation? Repair, paint, test. Guess what you're going to get the next day when they get that violation in the mail? And they're going to ask you what? What's this word repair mean? And you say? I don't know. You have to call a professional inspector, structural engineer, or a licensed fire escape inspector. Well, what's the word paint mean? Well, as soon as it's been structurally repaired and we've signed off on it, then I'll let you paint it. Well, who can paint it? You, sir, can paint it. Joe Painter can paint it. College kids can paint it. I don't care who paints it. What's test mean? Load test now. And when they go, what's that mean? You go, well, I'm going to tell you exactly what a load test is. A load test is this table, which is 8 by 3 times 8 times 3 is 24. 24 times 100 pounds per square foot means that in this platform I got to put 2,400 pounds of sand, rocks, lead, and I got to do that for 30 minutes. I got to put 40% of the load on that, take my measurements. Then for the remaining 20 minutes I got to watch it and take my measurements. And if for 30 minutes this thing holds 2,400 pounds, it passed the load test. That costs thousands of dollars to do. But the fire marshal can say, you know what? What was the test results? Well, all the bolts have been swapped out. So I'll bring the bolt? Yeah. What about the connections into the cement wall? They've all been either verified or they've been duplicated with that new epoxy bolt right next to the original, and they tied it in mechanically. Okay? And what's the engineer? Did they sign off on this? Yep, they signed off. Okay, I'll forego the load test. Guess who has that choice? Because it says, if required. You guys read your code, right? If necessary, right? It's an if question. Who's that give the power to? So if you tell people, if you're nice and you refurbish your fire escape like you've refurbished your foyer, you spent 50 grand on your marble fronts and you put a $30,000 rubber roof, you fix that fire escape the same way, I'll forego the load test. Let's talk about welded fire escapes. In the United States, you know how many welded fire escapes there are? 1 to 2% of all the fire escapes ever built are welded fire escapes. And that's because when they heat up in the summer and you got a connection fire escape, they do this. And they cool in the winter, they do this. Guess what they can't do when they're all welded? They can't do anything. Welds don't let you move. So they start tearing. Guess what happens when a lot of guys weld their fire escapes to the joints? Guess what gets in there? Moisture, rust. And they start eating the weld which way? Outside in or inside out? Can I see that when I'm inspecting? So every time I hit a fire escape that's welded, minimally all the treads get reinforced with a bolt, not a re-weld. And plus you can't weld. EPA says you can't weld on anything older than 1978 because you can't burn a flame to anything that has lead on it. So you go to a fire escape job and they got a guy roaring a welding machine. What do you make him do? First you ask him, where's your fire permit? And any of them have fire permits while they're welding on fire escapes? So you say, can't do that, and the EPA says you can't weld on a fire escape that's older than 1978. So, but the whole fire escape is bolted. Why is these guys welding versus bolting? It's easy. Do they remove the rust? No. So they're doing everything wrong. So what you do is you're driving down the road, you see somebody welding on a fire escape. Just shut it down. So the welded fire escapes, anytime I run across a welded fire escape, I reinforce every connection. Primarily the treads and all the supports get a new bolt. I keep the original weld, I seal it with silicone as best I can, and I still blow a hole in it and I put a bolt now I'm willing to sign off on it. It's all common sense stuff, right? All right, so this is a booklet. If anybody wants to leave me cards, we're printing this in obviously big form so that it's an actual booklet. You can just put it there on the shelf, and anytime somebody wants industry standard documentation, you can just pull it out, including information about load tests, typical reports. If there's a sample and example there, if you have any questions on any fire escapes that you have a photographic shot from your iPhone and from your camera, and you need some, an opinion, give us a call. We'll give you a free opinion on it as to whether or not, what's the major issue with it, if you're questioning whether or not that fire escape was properly repaired. In case you go to a fire escape, they have a certificate in file that came from an engineer, and you look at it, the thing looks like hell, take a picture of it, send it to us, we'll tell you, because every now and then, we do have these drive-bys by engineers who basically don't do their job very professionally, and they will sign off on crap. That will either kill the tenant or kill the fireman. The last people that you guys have available to you is your firemen. In Elizabeth, we taught, I think, about 300 firemen in about 4 days. Those guys that do the pre-plans, you got these guys walking down the city all the time doing pre-plans downtown and everywhere. Those guys are extra eyeballs for you. They're not going to be fire escape inspectors. They're just going to tell you about fire escapes that happen to be on a building. They happen to be on this building. They look at that building. They'll give you addresses of buildings that have fire escapes that don't have a tag on them. So you're a firefighter. So if you want to go online and you type in fire escape seminar on YouTube, you type in fire escape seminar New Jersey, fire escape seminar Newark, or Elizabeth, you're going to see some of those classes. We put them online for you. So in some of these classes that are online, you can actually have them during your monthly meeting. Just connect to a laptop, put it on a projector, watch 3 or 4 videos, and then talk about the videos. Fire Escape Academy has nothing but inspection videos, which is me teaching inspectors how to, the square head bolt issue. Fire escape repairs, fire escape inspections, and fire escape seminars is just another. It's like this. I got a camera. I got a camera over there. I got a camera over there. And I'll put this up online so that in your future you can use this as a training. Okay. Now I'll open it up for questions. Anybody have any questions? And I'm getting the hook to pull me off of the stage in a second. Anybody have any questions? Or if you want to just give me your cards and information, I'll stay in touch with you. And the next time there's
How about fire escape? You lift it up, and then it's supposed to drop down by itself, no weights, no nothing?
yeah, that's a guillotine ladder.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna, I'm upstairs and I'm playing with it, or I'm just lift it, and there's a dog down below, and I let go of the ladder, the guillotine ladder they call it.
I'm wondering if grandma can lift it.
Well, it's supposed to be single action requiring no special knowledge, right? It's supposed to drop 2 to 3 feet per second. So what's supposed to happen is grandma's supposed to go there and just release it. There's a simple release mechanism you can put on any chain, on any ladder you want right now.
It's just sitting on a clip. It's not.
Oh, I know, yeah, there's some that, there's a whole hook thing, it's illegal. All those are, anything that's not single action requiring no special knowledge. A ladder or cantilever is just a simple release latch, and as soon as you release it, it slides 2 to 3 feet per second. Now, if it's dropping 2 to 3 feet per second and it hits a dog or a child down below, is it going to kill them? Okay? It shouldn't, 2 to 3 feet per second. But you guillotine it, or you flop it out, or you just drop it, what happens to anybody down below, including you, directing traffic and saying, hey guys, let's get the trucks in here. There's a guillotine ladder above your head. And usually the leg of a ladder is just a pierce, it's a spear. You're just going to come down and it's going to skull you, what I'm saying? So those are legal. And they're easily modified. Because again, those ladders are made to either be permanently on a wall, on weights, or they even have fold-out ladders. I don't know if you guys know, they look like a drain pipe. So the ladder actually folds into itself. So all of these can be converted so that people, they're going to break in and all that stuff. You can put a fold-out ladder on the wall that comes all the way to the ground and only release from above. When you release it, does it flop out into an 18-inch wide fire escape ladder. Okay? Any more questions or?
Yes, Cisco, I have a question on the bolts that are used to either repair or fasten. Are there any minimum standards for those bolts?
Home Depot, the bolt there, grade 3, grade 5. The bolts are never going to fail you. I could take a tread right now, remove all the bolts out of it, put the string and put in pieces of wood in there, pegs, and you'll walk down that fire escape, you're not going to get hurt. So it's not the bolt that fails, it's the connection that expands and rips any bolt you put in there. So some people force titanium, force stainless steel, force galvanized. It means nothing. If you don't have a connection that's properly sealed, sealed. So as soon as you seal that with 50-year silicone, and I mean a lot of silicone, just get stupid with silicone, you just glue every joint. Now you got a fire escape that will outlast the owner of the building.
Now, the silicone though is resist paint.
No, there's two types of it. There's paintable silicone, which you put it on first, and then you paint after, and then there's silicone that you put in, you paint the whole fire escape, then you go, last thing you go through is with black silicone, and you just cock it into all the joints, it's already black against black, you don't paint that.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And even if you put the wrong one on and you paint over it, when it peels off, it's still black, still